Episode 121, Escaping Social Conditioning.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
And it's another Monday and another week at the inn of the very best podcast in the world. Your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Now, I'm speaking a bit nasal, as I just heard, for some unknown reason. I think my nasal spray kind of failed. But that being said, how was your weekend? Are you seeing more good in situations you're confronted with? Because that was Friday's exercise more than anything else, is to kind of go ahead and start the week with positivity, as pretty much everything in life should be. And so why not start off the week with something negative? Well, or at least, some negative things in our world, really, which are or can be put together in the collective term societal conditioning, not social, but societal conditioning. And there are a lot of interesting aspects that we're going to go over today, mainly, as always, based on examples that I've experienced. And so within this episode, it's going to be things like racism, prejudice. It's going to be the caste system in India, to those of you who are not familiar with it. A little bit of background and a frightening example that something like this can actually exist in the 21st century. It's going to be about societies being demonized, societies being, or ethnic groups being pursued based on religion or creed or whatever. In any case, it's about not being able to live with each other as we should, right? Okay, there we go. That's pretty much in one sentence what I'm trying to say. Most importantly, though, how is we going to fix it? And that's where kind of like my turbulent life experience comes in to a degree. So let's get started. What is societal conditioning? And we have to take one step back. Societal conditioning can be something positive as well. It doesn't have to ultimately have this negative connotation, in that I was born and raised, with few exceptions, in Germany. And as most of you know, Germany, in a way, Nazi Germany had shed and still has shed a very negative light on today's Germany in some cases, right? A lot of people can't let go, despite the fact that there were tyrants in other parts of the world that had a way higher body count than Hitler did, and without glorifying it. But as a responsible society, and that's where it kind of starts to fruition, is that we've had, north of 6, 7, 8 years of history lessons that were spiked always with World War II and how bad it was and how it came about, and lessons learned again. This may never happen again. How is we going to prevent it from happening again? And so on and so forth. It was years of studies. And because I wasn't really interested in that, it was like, dozens of failed exams probably. And after 1 year, it was like, okay, enough already. I got the point. And it's not like, my grandfather wasn't arrested many, many, many times over for being a member of the wrong political party, right? And so anyhow, there came this time when I said, all right, good, I'm done. And that's when things kind of went south with my school career. And here's the point. During my early teens, we spent a couple of years in the United States, and I was subject to the schooling system there. And the entire topic that took years in Germany to analyze and examine and do lessons learned and whatever, was covered in 4 weeks. I was like, World War II, here we go. It's like one lesson per week. And boom, you were done. And you did get the point there. It was like that. It wasn't like that you need to know every excruciating detail. Yeah, it helps for the idiots. But, if something that gruesome happens, you can convey it in like a condensed form, or at least, like in something in between, but not the extremes that I was subject to. So anyhow, long story short, this can be a societal conditioning as well, in that you implement into someone the idea of shame and, perpetual shame about what happened, and, no constructive discourse about how can we, as a society, grow out of that. Because at the same time, we had a bunch of racist movements going on in Germany. We had right-wing parties, so that's what why discussing this was so essential to our history teachers, obviously. Long story short, that was my kind of first exposure to societal conditioning. And the second one, probably a very, very dominant one, was when we were in the United States. We lived in Alabama, of all places. And, in your early teens, you really do save those memorable moments, right? And we were playing basketball somewhere, and we'd just been in Germany for leave. And it was the beginning of the techno movement wave, with the Love Parade going on in Berlin, and excessive ecstatic dance events happening pretty much across the globe. And Berlin was one of the main hubs for techno music. And I'd brought back some CDs, so we had this boombox that we would take to the basketball court, and we played that music. And around the corner came an old man, and he was like, "Turn off that nigger music." And I was like, "Dude, settle down. It's made by anything but, it's from Germany." "Well, it sounds like that damn nigger music." And it was like, he was, this guy was probably the age where he was listening, if at all, to anything Dolly Parton and older. And he had his vision, and there was nothing tolerated really in his world but that worldview that he had. And it was just, very, very interesting seeing this. He wasn't bitter. He was like, he was happy in his little world. He'd probably never left the county for anything, really. He did, I later found out, spend, we got into polite conversation, even though I was a kid. And, something very long lasting came out of this, very interesting relationship where we, just by our cultural differences, by our upbringing, and just by the fact that I got to spend time in his country, we were able to exchange so many fruitful thoughts and move each other forward in development. It was just amazing. It was just this amazing thing. He would, later on, I gave him articles and, showed him about this techno movement, what it was about, keep in mind I was a pubertarian teenager, but he was interested, and so this interesting discord happened, and I got, where he got his rather racist views from, was growing up in a situation, in a place like that just forms you, right? So the next interesting thing was something that I never really thought I would get exposed to, but I was working in Southeast Asia, and had a medical problem, and we went to a doctor. He was Indian, and we got into polite conversation also, and it was like he was just continuously asking me questions about the internet and how to make money on it and how to be a professional and how to get there. And I was like, okay, why, you're a doctor. Why do you want to know all of this shit? Right? He was a musician, wanted to publish his music. That was like the number one thing. And then it was like, well, okay, we established trust. And this guy was like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Not really a very sound medical practitioner. It was like, he was all right for the fundamental things. He'd got a degree somewhere. I don't want to know where he got it from, but he had some basic knowledge. And even my knowledge in a lot of cases was superior to his. Long story short, he comes out and says, well, look, the reason I've been asking you all of these questions about the internet and how to make a profession out of it is that my son wants to be a professional e-games player. And I couldn't help but chuckle, because the chances of being able to do that and, make a living off of that are slim, and so I was like, well, tell your son to get a normal profession first, something that he can fall back on, if this endeavor shouldn't work out. And he was like, my son can't. And I was like, wait, is he, I don't know, an idiot or something? Is he autistic? That the only thing he can do is that he can play computer games. And I was like, no, we were born into the lowest caste in India, and I made my way out of it by getting this medical degree, and that's it. My son is stuck. Otherwise, he's got to find a way that he doesn't have to interact with other people in India, particularly not in the rural parts, because nobody will accept him. Nobody will, really engage with him, except for, people of that caste. And I was like, wait, this is the 21st century, dude. This can't be happening, with people getting pissed off about women having 2% less pay than men. How can something like that exist in the world? In a presumably not so third world country anymore. I was like, there's something going on. And I had been to India before, but I was never exposed to that. So anyhow, long story short, I told the guy, look, here's what he should do. There's a few elemental things that he can, look at, learn. It doesn't necessarily have to be computer games, because you really have to be good, and you really have to invest a lot of money, which I'm assuming you don't have access to, and he was like, yeah, okay. And so, anyhow, long story short, and this was like my first exposure to the caste system. And I was like, holy fuck. I was really amazed at how something like that can happen. Now, out of this also came very, very, very lengthy, whiskey-fueled conversations with that guy. And it was just interesting to learn not only that something like that can exist today, but that it exists, and in the extent that it exists, and at the consequences on social life. That was just fucking amazing. So yeah, that was number 2. Number 3, the demonization and persecution of different ethnic groups, I think, would put it. And here's the background. When 9/11 happened, The part in me that was raised in the United States was in complete disbelief of what happened there. And I couldn't fathom why it happened. I didn't really buy into the story, how it happened. And even today there are many unanswered questions. Let's be diplomatic. And anyhow, long story short, and it didn't take a week until out of this blame game on Osama bin Laden as the perpetrator, whereas the mastermind, more or less, perpetrator, I think would be putting it mildly. But out of Osama bin Laden, due to his religious affiliation to Islam, came the demonization of pretty much every Muslim in the fucking world. And I was like, wait, and these terrible, terrible hours and hours and hours of history class came back to me. I said, wait, we've been down this road before. Didn't end well. Do we want to go down that road again? Do we want to put every Muslim in the same pot? Close the lid, put it down a river or whatever. What's the plan? Didn't really work out well last time. Do we want to do that? And that's the kind of questions that arose in my head. And I was amazed that even educated people and people that I thought that were clever started fearing everyone basically that was wearing a headscarf or that, was speaking Arabic and so on and so forth. And I was amazed at how interesting people could change in a negative way very quickly. And so that was kind of like, the peak of prejudice. And anyhow, as you see, there are many aspects by which we are influenced. And I tried to kind of tease it during all of my examples that I brought forth. It was only 3, but it took long enough to explain them to a ripe degree. The best thing you can do to someone that was brought up in an environment like that is talk to them and just ask them questions, where their hatred, where their prejudice, where their feelings came from, and interacting with them and telling them that there are positive examples very well out there. The best thing you can do, but you're not going to get the people there, but, for yourself and for your kids, the best thing to wipe their mind, off of some societal conditioning is either for you or, relatives or loved ones to live in other societies, to understand at least in part what benefit you have or which disbenefit. It's about exchanging. It's about developing. It's about fruitioning each other to grow, to understand, to learn, and eventually to develop, right? And it's not that it, alleviates you of all fear of different, but that's good. Certain amount of respect, call it fear, towards anything new is okay, because you have to learn, you have to develop. But so many enlightening things have happened in my life because I led discourse with people that were different, and we're going down a route where we're smashing each other's head in over the question of whether or not you should get vaccinated, or you should wear a mask, or do you believe in what COVID is as portrayed in the media, or do you believe the other experts that were silenced? And anyhow, that was Monday's episode. I hope that perhaps someone that could benefit from this episode. If you think this episode was terrible, send it to someone you hate, not just for shits and giggles. There are sharing buttons on the very best podcast in the world.com for all episodes. If you haven't subscribe to this podcast. And tomorrow we'll be back. And I think we're going to talk about the topic I have registered. Headline is Stand Up, Even If It Means Standing Alone. And in that sense, I hope you have a successful day. If you have had your successful day, have a good night. And we'll be in touch tomorrow. And peace out. Stay safe. And hear you tomorrow. I think I repeated that this 1,000th time, but it's okay. Just make sure. Bye now.